Supreme Commander Zixtal's crystalline appendages trembled with barely contained fury as they reviewed the damage assessment. Well, sir. Lieutenant Krathos shifted uncomfortably, their bioluminescent patches flickering in embarrassment. We sort of blew it up? The Supreme Commander's crystalline structure took on a dangerous red hue. You blew up humanity's moon, their only moon, the celestial body that's been critical to their species' evolution and development for millions of years. In our defense, sir, Krathos continued, mandibles clicking nervously, we thought it would demoralize them, show them our superior firepower. The tactical simulations suggested— The tactical simulations, Zixtal interrupted, didn't account for humanity's particular brand of— what's the term they use? Ah, yes. Their particular brand of absolute batshit insanity. The holographic display showed the aftermath of what should have been the hegemony's crowning achievement, the swift subjugation of yet another pre-FTL civilization. Instead, the images told a very different story. The remnants of the moon, now a glittering ring of debris around Earth, and the absolutely furious response of humanity that followed. Sir, another officer chimed in, perhaps we should discuss the humans' counterattack. The one they launched approximately 47 minutes after the moon's destruction? Zixtal's crystalline form dimmed slightly. Ah, yes, the counterattack. Please enlighten me about how a species that hadn't even achieved faster-than-light travel managed to not only reach our command ship, but also— They consulted their notes. And I quote from the damage report. Totally wreck our shit. The assembled officers shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Krathos spoke up again. They sort of took all the chunks of their moon that we'd just blown up and, well, threw them at us? Threw them. At us. Zixtal's voice was dangerously calm. Please elaborate on how a pre-FTL civilization threw moon chunks at our fleet. Well, that's the fascinating part, the science officer, Dr. Nemtek, interjected with poorly concealed excitement. They had these things called mass drivers already built into their lunar mining operations. When we destroyed the moon, they simply repurposed them. Rather ingeniously, actually. They used the explosion's own kinetic energy to— Dr. Nemtek, Zixtal interrupted. Your scientific enthusiasm, while normally appreciated, is perhaps misplaced when discussing the mechanisms by which humanity turned our supposedly strategic attack into a cosmic game of deadly dodgeball. The holographic display shifted to show the current state of the hegemony's once proud invasion fleet. Over half the ships were either destroyed or severely damaged, primarily by high-velocity impacts from what used to be humanity's moon. The remaining vessels were desperately trying to maintain formation while avoiding the still ongoing barrage of lunar debris. But surely, Zixtal continued, this isn't the extent of it. Please, tell me about their— what did they call it? Their moonshot protocol? Krathos's bioluminescence dimmed to nearly nothing. Ah, yes, that. Well, it seems that humanity had contingency plans for this exact scenario. They had plans for someone blowing up their moon? The Supreme Commander's disbelief was palpable. Not exactly, Krathos explained. They had plans for, and I'm quoting their intercepted communications here, what to do if some alien bastards try any funny business with our moon. It was filed under improbable but let's be prepared anyway because why not in their defense protocols. The holographic display updated again, showing a massive mobilization taking place on Earth's surface. Factories that had been producing civilian goods were rapidly being converted to military production. Scientific institutions were redirecting all research toward weaponry. And perhaps most worryingly, social media was full of humans making what they called memes about showing the aliens what happens when you mess with Luna. They named their moon, Zixtal noted quietly. They had an emotional attachment to it, and we just blew it up. Yes, sir, Krathos agreed, and it seems they took that personally. Personally enough to unite their entire species in less than an hour, another officer added. All their nations, all their factions, they've all agreed to, as they put it, kick our asses back to whatever corner of space we crawled out of. The Supreme Commander watched as another chunk of X-Moon slammed into one of their support vessels, turning it into an expanding cloud of debris. And how are they planning to do that exactly? They still don't have FTL capabilities. Dr. Nemtek cleared their throat. About that, sir. They've apparently figured out how our drives work, by studying our debris. They what? Zixtal's crystal structure briefly turned pure white in shock. Yes, sir. They're already building their own versions. Crude, but functional. They're calling it the Rush Order Special, next day delivery of karma. The Supreme Commander stared at the holographic display for a long moment, watching as yet another piece of lunar debris found its mark. So, to summarize, we blew up humanity's moon, which they apparently had emotional ties to, and in response, they've weaponized its remains, united their entire species, reverse-engineered our technology, and are now preparing to, as they put it, throw hands across the galaxy? That's a succinct summary, yes, Krathos admitted. And all this happened in less than 6 hours? 5 hours and 43 minutes, to be precise, Dr. Nemtek supplied helpfully. Zixtal's crystalline form cycled through several colors before settling on a resigned blue. Send the transmission. Sir? Krathos looked confused. Send the transmission to Earth. The one where we apologize profusely, offer to help them clean up the lunar debris, and promise to never, ever return to their solar system. But sir, the High Council, Zixtal interrupted, has never had their fleet decimated by chunks of a revenge moon thrown by an angry species that went from pre-FTL to reverse engineering our technology in the time it takes them to have what they call a power nap. They watched as another piece of the moon found its mark. Send the transmission. As the officers scrambled to comply, Zixtal couldn't help but notice something on the holographic display. Humans were already setting up colonial operations on the larger remaining chunks of their moon. They weren't just weaponizing it, they were rebuilding on it, making something new from the destruction. And if the intercepted communications were accurate, they were calling these new lunar chunk colonies Luna's kids. They're going to follow us, aren't they? Zixtal asked nobody in particular. Even after we apologize, even after we leave, they're going to figure out where we came from, and they're going to show up with whatever horrifying innovations they've cooked up in the meantime. According to their social media, Dr. Nemtek confirmed, they're already calling it their Return to Sender program. The Supreme Commander watched as their fleet continued to be pelted by pieces of moon. Well, they said finally, at least we've learned an important lesson about checking whether a species has emotional attachments to their celestial bodies before blowing them up. Should I add that to the official military handbook, sir? Put it on the first page, Lieutenant, in bold. And maybe add a note about how humans are particularly creative when it comes to improvising weapons out of literally anything, including their own destroyed satellite. As if to emphasize the point, a particularly large chunk of X-Moon streaked past the command ship's viewport, bearing what appeared to be crude but effective propulsion systems that definitely hadn't been there when it was part of the original moon. Sir, Krathos reported, the humans are sending a response to our transmission. Let me guess, Zixtal sighed. They're not accepting our apology? No, sir. The official response appears to be, sorry about your luck, but you messed with the wrong moon. It's accompanied by something they call a GIF of a human doing something called a moonwalk while making an obscene gesture. Zixtal watched as another piece of moon, now equipped with what appeared to be a hastily constructed but thoroughly effective guidance system, headed straight for their ship. Well, they mused, at least we'll have an interesting story to tell at the next Galactic Council meeting, assuming, of course, that humanity doesn't show up first with their weaponized moon chunks and whatever other terrifying innovations they've come up with in the meantime. Sir, Dr. Nemtek interjected, according to their latest communications, they're already calling their space program Luna's Revenge Tour. Of course they are, Zixtal sighed. Of course they are. The last thing the Supreme Commander saw before ordering a full retreat was a piece of the former moon streaking past their viewport, now decorated with what humans called graffiti, that read, "From Luna, with love." Some say that to this day, somewhere in the vast expanse of space, pieces of Earth's moon are still pursuing the hegemony's fleet, guided by humanity's spite and powered by their remarkable ability to turn tragedy into triumph. And if you listen carefully to the cosmos, you might just hear the sound of humans laughing as they chase their prey across the stars, riding the scattered remains of their beloved Luna. As for the hegemony, they added a new chapter to their military manual. Basic protocol for first contact scenarios. Rule number 1. Check if the species has named their moon before attempting any large-scale celestial demolition. Rule number 2. If they have, for the love of all things sacred in the universe, leave it alone. They never did manage to live down the incident in the greater galactic community. Being known as the empire that got their fleet wrecked by chunks of a destroyed moon thrown by an angry pre-FTL civilization tends to stick in people's memories. The humans, meanwhile, not only survived but thrived. They took their newfound unity, their reverse-engineered technology, and their particular talent for creative problem-solving to the stars. And if any alien species ever felt the urge to mess with Earth or its celestial neighbors again, well, there were still plenty of moon chunks left, and humanity had gotten very, very good at throwing them. You know what the worst part is? Sarah Chen, newly appointed Admiral of Earth's first revenge fleet, took a contemplative sip from her coffee mug. The text on it read, Moon's Revenge Tour 2024, VIP Access. We actually found their paperwork, the hegemony's invasion planning documents. Her XO, Commander James Rodriguez, raised an eyebrow. Do I want to know? They had us classified as harmless pre-FTL species number 4721. Can you believe that? Harmless. She gestured to the viewport of their flagship, the ESS Luna's Wrath, where the remains of 3 hegemony cruisers drifted by, each thoroughly perforated by weaponized moon chunks. To be fair, Rodriguez offered, we were pre-FTL. For about 6 more hours after they blew up Luna. Nothing motivates human innovation quite like spite, Sarah agreed, watching as their fleet's newest weapon system came online. They called it the LUNA, Lunar Utilized Neutralization Artillery, and it was essentially a giant mass driver that used smaller pieces of the former moon as ammunition. The fact that they'd managed to build it in under a week was testament to humanity's remarkable ability to channel rage into engineering. Status report from Earth, Rodriguez announced, checking his tablet. The Luna's kids' colonies are fully operational. They're already talking about hosting the next Olympics on New Armstrong Station. He paused. Also, someone started a business selling authentic moon chunk jewelry made from the smaller debris pieces. Sarah snorted. Of course they have. Never let it be said that humans can't monetize literally anything. She stood up, walking to the tactical display where dozens of red dots represented tracked hegemony vessels. How's the chase going? They're still running. But here's the interesting part. We intercepted some of their communications with their home government. Apparently, they're having trouble explaining how they lost half their fleet to, and I quote, angry primates throwing rocks. Those rocks are equipped with advanced propulsion systems and targeting arrays. Sarah pointed out proudly. Very sophisticated rocks. The bridge crew's attention was drawn to a new alert. One of their long-range scouts had returned with intelligence about the hegemony's next planned stop, a refueling station in a system they called Outpost Beta 7. Well, Sarah grinned, settling back into her command chair. It would be rude not to drop by and say hello, especially since they were kind enough to visit Earth first. Admiral, one of the sensor operators called out. You might want to see this. We've detected some interesting energy signatures from the hegemony fleet. They appear to be charging some kind of superweapon. Sarah's grin widened. Let me guess. Another big gun they think will solve all their problems? Yes, ma'am. According to our analysis, it's designed to... Oh. The operator paused. They're trying to build a weapon that can pulverize asteroids and small moons. They seem to think that's the solution to their current predicament. The bridge was silent for a moment before breaking into laughter. Rodriguez wiped tears from his eyes as he explained. So their response to getting their fleet wrecked by chunks of our moon is to build a weapon that will create more chunks for us to throw at them? Forward their weapon specs to R&D, Sarah ordered, still chuckling. I'm sure our engineers would love to see how it works. Maybe we can help them improve it before they use it on themselves. The tactical display updated, showing the hegemony fleet's desperate attempt to maintain formation as they fled toward their refueling station. They'd learned to be wary of larger debris fields, having figured out the hard way that humans had become exceptionally good at hiding weaponized moon chunks among natural space debris. Message from Earth Command, Rodriguez announced. They're asking for an update on Operation Return to Sender. Sarah took another sip from her coffee. Tell them Phase 1 is proceeding as planned. The hegemony fleet is being herded exactly where we want them. She paused. Also ask them how the new lunar ring is working out. I heard tourism is booming. Yes, ma'am. Apparently the Luna Memorial Ring has become Earth's hottest tourist destination. They're offering zero-G bungee jumping between the larger chunks, and someone's opened a theme park called Luna's Revenge Land. Humanity, Sarah mused, never missing an opportunity to combine vengeance with profit. The tactical display lit up again as the hegemony fleet attempted another FTL jump. They'd been doing shorter and shorter jumps, trying to shake their pursuers, not realizing that every piece of their destroyed ships was being carefully collected by human salvage teams for research purposes. "You know what's really impressive?" Rodriguez said, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. "The hegemony's still trying to figure out how we reversed engineered their tech so quickly. Their analysts are going crazy trying to understand it." "Has anyone told them about caffeine yet?" Sarah asked innocently. "No, ma'am. I think that might count as revealing state secrets." A new alert drew their attention. The hegemony fleet had just transmitted another message, this time addressed directly to the pursuing human forces. Sarah gestured for it to be played. Supreme Commander Zixtal's crystalline form appeared on screen, their color a mix of exhausted blue and frustrated red. "To the human forces pursuing us, we have already apologized for the unfortunate incident with your moon. We have offered reparations. We have promised to never return to your system. What more do you want?" Sarah leaned forward, a predatory smile on her face. "Open a channel." When the connection was established, she spoke clearly and calmly. "Supreme Commander, this isn't about what we want. This is about what Luna would have wanted." There was a long pause before Zixtal responded. You're pursuing us across multiple star systems because it's what your destroyed moon would have wanted?" "Exactly," Sarah confirmed cheerfully. "Luna always believed in going the extra mile." The transmission ended with Zixtal making a sound that their linguistics experts would later classify as the crystalline equivalent of a frustrated scream. "Plot a course for Outpost Beta 7, Sarah ordered, "and prepare the LUNA system for another demonstration. I think it's time to show the hegemony that Earth's hospitality extends well beyond our solar system." As the ESS Luna's Wrath and its fleet of vengeance-driven vessels continued their pursuit, Sarah couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The hegemony had attacked Earth expecting to find a harmless pre-FTL civilization. Instead, they'd discovered that humans were remarkably good at three things: holding grudges, improvising weapons, and combining the two into an interstellar chase that would become legendary across the galaxy. "Message from the engineering department," Rodriguez reported. "They've finished the modifications to the LUNA system. They're calling it the Mark II version." "What's new about it?" "They've figured out how to make the moon chunks explode into smaller moon chunks upon impact. They're calling it the gift that keeps on giving." Sarah laughed. "Perfect. Make sure to document the hegemony's reaction when we demonstrate it. I hear the Luna Memorial Museum back on Earth is collecting footage for their greatest hits exhibit." The stars streaked by as humanity's revenge fleet continued its pursuit, each piece of their destroyed moon now a reminder that some lines shouldn't be crossed, some boundaries shouldn't be pushed, and some civilizations shouldn't be underestimated, especially ones that name their moons and take it personally when you blow them up. Supreme Commander Zixtal was having what humans would call a really bad month. Currently, they were staring at the holographic display of Outpost Beta 7, or rather, what remained of it after humanity's latest demonstration of their creativity with lunar artillery. "They did what with the moon chunks this time?" they asked, their crystalline structure cycling through various shades of disbelief. Lieutenant Krathos, who had somehow survived this long despite being the bearer of consistently bad news, cleared their throat. They made them explode into smaller chunks, sir, which then also exploded into even smaller chunks. Like a recursive nightmare of lunar shrapnel," Dr. Nemtek added, their scientific enthusiasm still inappropriately intact. "Really quite ingenious. They've somehow managed to maintain the tracking capabilities even in the tertiary fragments." "Fascinating," Zixtal said flatly. "And our refueling station?" "Well," Kurthel consulted their notes. "The humans are calling it Luna's first interstellar branch office now. They've already set up what they call a gift shop." The Supreme Commander's crystalline form briefly flickered with static. "A gift shop?" "Yes, sir. They're selling t-shirts that say, 'I visited Beta 7 and all I got was this lovely moon chunk.' Also commemorative plates." Before Zixtal could process this latest development, another officer rushed in with a new report. "Sir, we've intercepted more human communications. They're making a documentary." "A what?" "A historical record of events, but for entertainment. They're calling it Luna, the unauthorized biography, a story of love, loss, and throwing hands across the galaxy." Meanwhile, aboard the ESS Luna's Wrath, Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing the footage from their latest engagement while enjoying what had become her favorite morning ritual, drinking coffee from increasingly creative moon-themed mugs. Today's featured the text, "Luna's Revenge Tour," now playing at an alien outpost near you. Status report, she called out, watching with satisfaction as the holographic replay showed their LUNA Mark II system in action. The explosion of moon chunks into smaller moon chunks was particularly satisfying in slow motion. Commander Rodriguez approached with his tablet. Good news and better news, Admiral. The good news is that the hegemony fleet's fuel reserves are critically low. The better news is that we've successfully commandeered their refueling station and converted it into our first extraterrestrial gift shop. How's business? Surprisingly good, actually. Turns out there's a huge market for authentic human vengeance merchandise in this sector. Several alien species have already placed bulk orders for I-supported Luna's Revenge Tour merchandise. Sarah nodded approvingly. Nothing says don't mess with Earth quite like a healthy profit margin. Any word from our R&D department about the Mark III version? Rodriguez grinned. Oh, you're going to love this. They've figured out how to make the moon chunks sing. They what now? Every time one of the chunks hits a target, it plays a few notes. They've programmed them to play something called Moonlight Sonata. The engineers are calling it Luna's Greatest Hits, the musical edition. Sarah stared at her XO for a long moment before breaking into laughter. Please tell me we have footage of the hegemony's reaction to being bombarded by musical moon chunks. Better than that. Their internal communications show they're convinced it's some kind of psychological warfare. They can't decide if we're trying to drive them insane or just showing off. Why not both? Sarah mused, turning her attention back to the tactical display. The remaining hegemony ships were clustered together, trying to devise a strategy against an enemy that seemed to treat interstellar warfare like a combination of a revenge plot and a Broadway musical. Message from Earth, Rodriguez announced. The Luna Memorial Ring is hosting its first interplanetary conference next week. The topic is Innovation Through Spite, a Human Success Story. They're asking if you'd like to give the keynote speech. Tell them I'd be honored, Sarah replied. Also, ask if they've finished installing the zero-G roller coaster between the moon chunks. I heard they're calling it Luna's Wild Ride. Another alert drew their attention. The hegemony fleet was transmitting again. Put them through, Sarah ordered, straightening in her command chair. Supreme Commander Zixtal appeared on screen, their crystalline form showing signs of stress fractures. Admiral Chen, they began, trying to maintain dignity. Your species' dedication to revenge is impressive. But surely we can reach some kind of agreement that doesn't involve being pursued across the galaxy by explosive musical pieces of your former moon? Sarah pretended to consider this. You know, you make an interesting point. Tell you what, we'll stop pursuing you with regular moon chunks. She paused for dramatic effect. Starting next week, we'll be using the new Mark III versions exclusively. I think you'll find they really capture Luna's musical soul. Their musical soul, Zixtal repeated weakly. Oh yes, nothing says you shouldn't have blown up our moon quite like being hit with a chunk of it while Beethoven plays in the background. Sarah smiled pleasantly. Consider it a cultural exchange. After the transmission ended, Rodriguez turned to his admiral. You know, I'm starting to think the hegemony regrets their first contact strategy. You think? Sarah gestured to the viewport, where another piece of weaponized moon chunk gracefully arced through space, a few notes of classical music already emanating from its guidance system. At least we're being educational about it. I hear several alien species have started including Earth in their places not to invade training manuals. The tactical display updated, showing the hegemony fleet's latest attempted escape route. They'd taken to avoiding any region of space that contained natural satellites, having developed what human psychologists might term moon-related PTSD. New message from R&D, Rodriguez reported. They're working on the Mark IV version. They won't tell me what it does, but they've named the project Luna's Greatest Plot Twist. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned? They just sent a follow-up message that says, and I quote, "Trust us, it's going to be epic." Well then, Sarah settled back in her chair, watching as another musical moon chunk found its target, the opening notes of Moonlight Sonata echoing through space. I guess we'll have to make sure the hegemony sticks around for the grand finale. As the ESS Luna's Wrath continued its pursuit, the story of humanity's unique approach to interstellar warfare spread throughout the galaxy. Alien civilizations began to reconsider their invasion plans, having learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate a species that can turn a catastrophe into a tourist attraction, a weapon system into a musical instrument, and a quest for vengeance into a profitable merchandising opportunity. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, Supreme Commander Zixtal was beginning to understand that perhaps, just perhaps, they should have read the fine print in that harmless pre-FTL species classification a bit more carefully. The R&D department of the ESS Luna's Wrath had a reputation for being, as their official documentation put it, enthusiastically unhinged. This reputation was not helped by their latest creation, which Admiral Sarah Chen was currently staring at with a mixture of awe and disbelief. You turned the moon chunks into what, now? Dr. Miyamoto, head of the R&D department, beamed with pride. We call it the LUNA Mark IV system. Lunar Utilized Neutralization Artillery with Multiplication Capabilities. She gestured to the holographic display. Watch this! The simulation showed a standard moon chunk approaching a target. Upon impact, instead of simply exploding or playing music, it did something that made Sarah question whether her coffee had been accidentally spiked with hallucinogens. Did that moon chunk just replicate itself? Exactly! Dr. Miyamoto's enthusiasm was borderline concerning. We've incorporated some of the hegemony's matter replication technology that we reverse-engineered. When a Mark IV chunk hits something, it uses the target's own mass to create more moon chunks. Commander Rodriguez, who had been quietly watching, finally spoke up. So we're not just throwing moon chunks at them anymore. We're throwing moon chunks that turn their ships into moon chunks, which then get thrown back at them. Sarah finished, a slow grin spreading across her face. That's beautifully twisted. I love it. Meanwhile, aboard what remained of the hegemony's command ship, Supreme Commander Zixtal was reviewing their latest tactical analysis when a junior officer burst into the command center. Sir, our long-range sensors have detected something unusual about the humans' new weapons. Zixtal's crystalline structure dimmed preemptively. Define unusual. Well, sir, you know how they were already hitting us with exploding musical pieces of their moon? A fact that will haunt my regeneration cycles until the end of time, yes. They've upgraded them. The officer's bioluminescent patches flickered nervously. The new ones seem to be able to convert our ship's mass into more moon chunks, which then join their arsenal, which then hit more of our ships, which then... I understand the concept of exponential growth, thank you, Zixtal interrupted. They turned to Dr. Nemtek, who was studying the sensor data with inappropriate fascination. How are they doing this? Oh, it's actually quite brilliant, Dr. Nemtek exclaimed. They've taken our matter replication technology and modified it to specifically produce lunar material. The programming is remarkably elegant. They've even maintained the musical subroutines in the replicated chunks. So you're telling me, Zixtal said slowly, that not only are we being pursued across the galaxy by chunks of their moon, but now those chunks can turn our own ships into more chunks of their moon? Yes! And they all play Beethoven! Back on the ESS Luna's Wrath, Sarah was reviewing the first practical test of the Mark IV system. The results were, to put it mildly, spectacular. Message from Earth Command, Rodriguez reported. They're asking about the sudden increase in lunar material in our arsenal. Apparently, the Luna Memorial Ring Tourism Board wants to know if they can expect any new additions to their attraction. Tell them this batch comes with a fascinating backstory. Previously owned by the hegemony, now repossessed by Luna's revenge tour. Sarah watched as another volley of Mark IV chunks launched from their ship. How's our gift shop doing? The Beta 7 branch is breaking all sales records. The I got converted into a moon chunk and all I got was this t-shirt line is particularly popular. Also, 3 different alien species have applied for franchise rights. The tactical display updated, showing the hegemony fleet's increasingly desperate attempts to avoid the new weapons. They'd taken to scanning every piece of debris in their path, having learned the hard way that humans had become extremely good at disguising their lunar artillery as innocent space rocks. Update from our intelligence division, Rodriguez said. The hegemony's military academy has added a new required course. Basic celestial body psychology, understanding why you shouldn't blow up sentient species' moons. Sarah nodded approvingly. Nice to see they're learning, though I think their current practical exam might be a bit more intense than they expected. The bridge crew's attention was drawn to a new alert. The hegemony was attempting to transmit another message. Supreme Commander Zixtal appeared on screen, their crystalline structure showing signs of what human psychologists would later term advanced moon-related anxiety. Admiral Chen, they began, their voice carrying the weight of someone who had thoroughly reconsidered every life choice that led to this moment. Your species' dedication to creative revenge has been educational. But surely you must see that converting our entire fleet into musical moon chunks is perhaps excessive. Sarah pretended to consider this. Excessive would have been blowing up someone's moon without checking if they had an emotional attachment to it first. She smiled pleasantly. We're just being thorough in our response. Think of it as a comprehensive lesson in interstellar diplomacy. By turning our ships into replicas of your moon that play classical music while pursuing us. Well, we could have made them play pop music instead. Would you prefer that? The look of horror that crossed Zixtal's crystalline features suggested they would not, in fact, prefer that. After the transmission ended, Rodriguez turned to his admiral. You know what's really impressive? The merchandising team has already started production on Mark IV, the musical commemorative plates. Humanity, Sarah mused, watching as another hegemony ship was converted into a symphony of vengeful lunar material, never letting a good crisis go uncommercialized. The tactical display showed the ever-growing cloud of weaponized moon chunks, both original and converted, pursuing the dwindling hegemony fleet. Each impact now added to their arsenal, creating what the R&D department had dubbed a self-sustaining revenge ecosystem. Message from the Luna Memorial Museum back on Earth, Rodriguez reported. They're opening a new wing called From Tragedy to Strategy, how blowing up our moon became someone else's problem. Sarah laughed. Perfect. Make sure to send them the footage of the Mark IV's first test. It'll make a great interactive exhibit. As the ESS Luna's Wrath continued its pursuit, the legend of humanity's creative approach to interstellar warfare grew. Alien civilizations began including Earth in their diplomatic training programs, usually under the heading, Why Proper Research Before Invasion is Important, a case study in lunar diplomacy. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, Supreme Commander Zixtal was beginning to understand that perhaps the next time they updated their species classification system, they should add a new category. Will absolutely weaponize their own tragedy